Does anyone else have any thoughts on the different platforms we should be looking into? And then also if it's helpful, harmful, neutral to be investing in new platforms where we potentially are siloing ourselves?
Well, I think that kind of goes down, like when we're talking about audiences, I think that's like the most important thing, because we have to know who we're reaching. If you're a creator, you have to know who you're reaching, because you could be creating a huge library of creators who are all talking to the same people. And that's not necessarily effective. And so when we're looking at platforms, and also platforms are changing how their algorithms work all the time. And if you're a creator and you depend on these platforms to make money for your entire brand, and they change one thing, we saw that with Facebook and video ages ago, where they changed one part of their model and it destroyed a lot of media companies that had pivoted to Facebook and video to build out their entire company. And so when we talk about platforms, we have to be very aware that like we are not in control of the very thing on which we are building our brands. So, you know, that's just, I think you guys can speak more to that and the concern than I can. But I do want to be really specific about when we look at data and we talk about, and this is why the Joe Rogan of the left thing really is like something I want to unpack, which is our audiences, who we think we're talking to and who we're like, we're really reaching them, look at these numbers. Those numbers might not be the people that we need to be reaching. And the smaller, like micro influencers who are reaching smaller people, but a completely different group of folks, might be the more impactful, influential, and important creator. And figuring out, as strategists in this space, how we identify those people, what platforms they're on, and supporting them, like data cuts both ways. And sometimes I've seen that like the left can be very in love with data, and that's great. We love data, we love numbers, but it can't be the entire strategy. So, and this is particularly true as platforms are like owned and by like more and like one person who's making singular decisions about what's happening on that platform. I don't know, just hypothetically, if there was like a CEO. But yeah, I think that's just one thing that we could factor into our strategy a little bit more, is understanding our own biases when we're looking at content and judging what's successful, being like, there are entire worlds on the internet that we don't know about, that other people participate in, that we should know about.
I think it's important that you have creators on this stage and people that do the data and that kind of thing, because I know that for me as a creator, I don't look at the data, because I don't want it to affect the actual product that I'm making, what I'm putting out there. I never looked at the data. I never monetized any of my platforms at the beginning, because I didn't want to say, oh, these videos do better, so I'll do more of these because that will be where I make money. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that what I was creating was worthwhile, that it was filling a need, that it filled a hole in the market that wasn't being filled, and I wanted to do it authentically. And I think that because I did it like that, my reach grew authentically. So I now have, 2.5 million followers, and I only know that because my husband tells me, and he follows all my data. But I think it's really important that creators do the work, and then there's people like these guys that are following the data, because that's how you make authentic relationships. That's why people trust you. That's why the new media, like I think you're asking about what media to follow. I think YouTube is the future. I think it's going to take over from mainstream media. I think that things like Blue Sky are important, because there's a reason that Elon bought Twitter. And it was because it was a town square. It was because it was a place that we could seek out experts in fields like immunology or science or journalists, and we could curate a feed that allowed us to know what the truth was. It was a place to build a resistance. It was a place to build community. And he did that. He bought it and destroyed it on purpose, so we would have nowhere to go and nowhere to unite. So I think having places like Blue Sky, even Threads, as a place where people can come together and connect and organize and plan and push back against propaganda is essential. So if that's going to be Blue Sky, then it's Blue Sky until they ruin it with, a for-profit model. But I do think it's really important that creators keep doing the work that is authentic, because that's where I think that's the future. I think people can tell now when people are doing it for clicks and hits, and they
Yeah.
can tell when you're being authentic with your work.
Yeah.
And when you talk about pushing back on propaganda, I think we can distill a lot of this down to just the pure volume that the right wing has right now when it comes to propaganda. You open X, it's like 9 out of every 10 tweets in my feed, even if I'm not following right wingers. The volume is just absolutely insane. And I think the volume will follow if we get like likable faces, we get the funding, we get everything we need in place. But it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle. Elon Musk will send out some absolutely BS tweet and it'll have like 90 million views or whatever. And then the response that's correcting him has like 14,000 views. And you're like, this is not sustainable. We need a way to, and then on top of that, of course, Russia is incentivized to boost all of this information, all these algorithms. So YouTube is the future, absolutely, but it's also about the volume across all platforms, I think.
And ownership.
I want to pivot a little bit to the tension that we have felt. We definitely felt it after the DNC with legacy media. Leigh, you have a very large platform, and you have started to parlay that into CNN. The legacy media is where, you know, a lot of people still get their news, but we do know that many more people now are getting their news and information, especially Gen Z and millennials, online. So do you think now that legacy media is taking the digital community more seriously? Do you feel like they're just doing it because they think that by just having you on a panel that, you know, on their news, that they're going to reach your audience? What do you feel is the energy there? And do you think there's a future there, or that we should just continue to build online?
I think legacy media is a for-profit media. I mean, that's what it is. It's a for-profit model. And they take a look at my numbers or someone like Brian Tyler Cohen's numbers, and they put us on TV, A, so we can represent the left, and they don't have to fact check, and B, so they can capitalize on our numbers online. So I think CNN is being smart as a business model putting me on, because if I clip something from myself on their show, it'll be 2+ million hits. If they clip something from their own show, it'll be 30,000 hits. So they are using me for my numbers, just like I'm using them for legitimacy, right? And I think we need to be able to legitimize the social media creators, the people that are making independent media. And we do that, unfortunately, with money. There's a reason we listen to Joe Rogan. It's because somebody gave him $125 million to do that show, right? That legitimized him. Otherwise, he would just be Joe Rogan, the guy from Fear Factor, or Joe Rogan, the guy, you know what I mean?
Lest we forget.
Yeah, lest we forget. But it legitimizes them. So I do mainstream media in many ways. I did it so much leading up to the election because I could see that no one was pushing back on what the truth actually was. So I chose to do it not because they paid me to do it, but because I thought the truth needed a shot. And it's like being a salmon swimming upstream on those shows. And they favor the right-wing creators. And I don't know why they do that. I did the show that I've been doing a lot lately post-election. It was my first time doing it post-election. And they've always favored sort of the right-wing talking points. But post-election, it was striking how much they were doing it. And again, if you return to it being a for-profit model, at first they were trying to say, we're trying to keep both sides of the audience. So they were both sidesing everything. Now they're saying, we are afraid we're going to lose our broadcast license because this new administration has said that they're going to treat us like enemies of the state. So now they're catering to what they think is coming in. They're literally Timothy Snyder obeying in advance, right? So it is very alarming to be on those sets and watch how they're pivoting to make sure that they please the next administration. So I really do not think people should count on mainstream media giving you the truth moving forward if this is going to be their model. If their model is stay in business, make money, in the next administration, that means catering to that administration. So we really have an opportunity here for independent voices and independent media. This is a great time to not only scoop up all the viewers that mainstream media is losing by being so reckless with the truth, but also to pick up all the people that literally will never watch mainstream media anyway. Everyone Adam's age and younger are not getting their information from TV. They're not like my father sitting in front of the mainstream media. They're like my son watching his news on TikTok. So we have to cater to them. But it's also a great business model because they're hemorrhaging viewers. So where are those viewers going to go? And I think that's what we need to be focusing on.
To your followers.
Hopefully. That would be great.
Can I just also say one thing? One of my favorite things about Leigh and like a bunch of creators we worked with, Leigh is a New York Times best-selling author.
Period.
That has nothing to do with CNN. That is because she built an audience that trusts her across a bunch of platforms. And she also has an incredible husband who's amazing at production. Like, she's built a team and built a small thing, not a small thing at all, built a huge thing, but it's all off her back and her work. The more, going back to the Blue Sky piece, the more that we can do to make sure that people have like human resources. Like, we were talking to a YouTuber the other day who's built 1 million plus followers on YouTube, pumps out incredible content, like doing like full 30-minute shows. And we're like, how are you feeling about TikTok? How are you feeling about Instagram? They're like, it's exhausting. I don't know how to do it. It's not my thing. Like, I don't know where I'm going with it. And they don't have the resources to scale up on that. So if we want to talk about Blue Sky, there might be value there, but we have to put in the time and the effort. Like, Leigh has put in the time and the effort to build an audience that's paid off in a lot of ways. And you see that in tangible things, like selling books, showing up in places around the country. Those are the proof points that we know we're breaking through with real people. We just got to keep doing more and more of that.
Yeah, I think we need to encourage the left wing to support that, because we wouldn't know who Candace Owens is or Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk unless they had been supported, not only by Russia, Tim Pool, but by right-wing donors here in America. They've really sponsored that entire ecosystem, and it has helped them so much win the messaging war, which I think is how we lost.
I think to one part of your question, and you can probably speak to this very well as well, is that legacy media has a really hard time translating. There's really high production value in those studios. That's not what works online. Like, what people trust, there's a huge degradation of public trust in institutions. The media is not immune from that. There's a lot of lack of trust in how the media approaches news. So when people know that this is from the New York Times, they associate it from the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox News, whatever it may be. It's the people, individuals that they trust, and it's really hard. I think Snapchat had done a really good experiment on this, where they had legacy institutions doing shows with them and then converted some of their journalists into creators to do the same content, but do it less from a very highly produced studio approach to a much more endemic to the platform approach, and they saw huge success with that. So it's a lot of also just media institutions knowing how to create one kind of content and not the other, and really struggling to invest in that, to find the creators to do that, to really make that a part of their what they do, because for years they've invested so much in the model that we know today.
People ask me, it's if you want to if I started TikTok, what should I do? The best studio on TikTok is just setting your phone on your dashboard, because it's in your car. It's as trustable as it could possibly be, and it goes viral every time. So it's if you want to start an account and actually put in, just sit in your car.
Well,
there's a reason for that.
Off that, which is the kind of the moving target in the room, which is the algorithm, right? We know that on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, the algorithm changes, and they also serve you content that you like. So if you're like me and you really have been watching a lot of miniature horses running around to techno music, that's all you're gonna get on your For You page for a whole week. So sorry, it's true, I'm not gonna lie. As we're talking to more and more creators on the left, we're encouraging people to start creating. What are some algorithm hacks that you would suggest using, or that you've found has worked in your work, that can get us out of our insular echo chambers for the people who follow us already?
I'll just say the algorithm is brutal, especially on TikTok. It's uniquely brutal. You're either getting 7 views or 300,000, no in between. But then at the same time, it's brutal because it's like the free market. So when you're scrolling through the YouTube feed, you see all of these different thumbnails. And I liken it to walking through a grocery store and seeing all of these different types of cereals. And you want to choose a cereal that appeals to you. So when you're a creator, you got to look at it through a few lenses. You got to create something unique that not many other people can do. When I first started doing my Trump rally content, Jordan Klepper does that, but he does it for Comedy Central. I do it in a very respectful manner where I'm not making fun of them. I'm trying to inch them towards our position. Show them that you want to put America first, we fund Ukraine, that's how we put America first, right? You can inch them towards our position. And that was unique. That was explosive. It went viral. And there's so many different ways you can do unique stuff. And then on a micro level, no matter what platform you're using and you want to create content, everything should have a hook. Whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on TikTok, it could be a 3 to 10 second hook to pull people in, make it interesting.
So what's an example?
If I were making a video about
this panel,
I could either go, 10 minutes into this panel, someone says something really interesting, blah, blah, blah. Or, you know how you scroll through TikTok and someone's like, this is insane, this is wild, or whatever. And you're like, wait, what's insane? I gotta watch this for a second. Yeah, I mean, you can pull people in. You don't have to be too in their face about it, but even when I'm on YouTube, I try to make the first 10 seconds very interesting. I try to pull them in and I'm like, I gotta show you guys what Donald Trump was saying today. I hope you guys, I hope you guys can see how absolutely absurd this is. And then they wanna see what it is, yeah.
Lee, how about you? I mean, you are in
Well,
the kitchen a lot.
this is why we need a team, because
Yeah.
my brain's like, I don't do any of that. And that is why you need a team. You need a team of someone who's Adam's age, being like, Leigh, do a hook at the beginning. I have never done that.
But this is the algorithm, right? I mean, you have over like 2.5 million followers
But
across
I
platforms.
think that the beauty of the internet is that there's room for a lot of different types of voices. And I think it's very important that we don't all jam ourselves into the same thing. Like, I don't think we should all be doing, like, I'm sure it works beautifully. So does rage baiting, right? That also works. My podcast airs on my network and on MeidasTouch. And on MeidasTouch, they always change the title of my podcast, right? So my podcast will be called
Interesting.
A Way to Get Back to, whatever. And then on MeidasTouch, it'll be called Donald Trump Loses Everything. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because it's the same podcast. But they have a way of getting people in, and I don't do that. But I think that there is a reason people trust me, they believe me, they bought my book, they made it a bestseller, and I think that there's room for all of that.
Yeah.
It comes back to authenticity, to trust, to why you're doing the work in the first place, and why we need to be supported by a bigger structure so that I can continue to do the work that's authentic to people, and they can say, I'm going to Leigh because I know she won't lie to me, and then someone else can figure out how to social media clip it into, the stratosphere.
Yeah.
You have different audiences.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, but just on that point, I mean, this goes back to like which platforms matter in silos. I mean, one of the things we see a ton of, Adam has a massive audience. If you look, I'm not gonna talk about your stats, but if you look at the audiences platform by platform, they're wildly different, right? And like one of the things like we like beg people to understand in like the first conversation on any project is the face of the creator is not their audience, and their audience on one platform is the polar opposite on the other. And so we can share those pieces, but I think that's the thing. The tactics will always change on what actually draws the viewer in. The other part is consistency and actually having the energy. I mean, we know creators who like won't come to certain events IRL because that means that's a day they aren't creating content.
Yeah.
Even like in the same town, there was something in California. We had a creator who lived an hour or less away from the event.
Yeah.
Hour there, hour at the event, hour back. They're like, that's 3 hours I can't make content.
Yeah.
That breaks my entire plan for the day, the week, and my numbers.
And
That's
that
insane.
speaks to creating content, even though, yes, you can just hold a phone in front of your face and start talking to it, it is difficult, and it should be respected for the amount of work that it takes to do that. Just saying that is worth noting.
I was supposed to fly out at 9 after this because I want to be in studio all day tomorrow, but just so I could chill with you guys at the reception, I switched my flight to 6 a.m. tomorrow so I can be in studio.
That's right, we'd love to see it!
But the point is, yeah, you do have to be in studio as much as possible,
Yeah.
or else you're losing out to the competition.